This is the fabric I'll be using for this project. It's 2 yards and it's going to be enough for me. I'm plus size, so if you want the sides to be longer, you could use more. Now I'm just measuring the part I'll take out for the collar, and I'm taking out about 6.5 inches for the collar. And you know, the regular African print fabric is 45 inches, so when I take out 6.5 inches for the collar, you already know the length of the dress. Now I've cut that out, and that's what I'll be using for the collar. So now I'll be placing my measurements on this fabric. Now note that it's a free dress, so I'm not going to be using quarter of each, like my bust, my waist, my hip. No, I'm going to be using just my hip measurement for this dress. That's my hip measurement is 50, so I'll be using 12.5 for the bust, 12.5 for the waist and for the hip, because the dress doesn't have a zipper, and I just want it to be free. So first I'll be taking my neck width. I'll be using 3.5 inches, and then the back neckline I'll take 1.5 inches and 3.5 for the front. I'll connect it now, the back and the front, and then I'll go ahead to take my shoulder slope 1 inch on the side of the dress, and then I'll connect it to the neck. I'll just place 1 inch there, and then I'll connect it to the neckline. We need to take our shoulder slope for this dress so it doesn't stand. Although there are some dresses we don't take it though, so it's not necessary really if you don't want to. Depends on what you want. So now just go ahead and place my vertical measurement. So from the shoulder to 11 inches is my bust line, 17 inches is the half length, and then 9 inches below that is the hip line. As I said earlier, I'm not going to be putting a zipper, and the armhole will start from the bust line because it has to be free. The dress has to be free. I'm just rolling horizontal lines where I've already marked my vertical measurements. Then now just place my measurements. I said I'll be using a quarter of my hip measurement for the bust, the waist and the hip as well. So I'm placing the quarter of my hip measurement, which is 12.5. I'm placing it on the bust. For the waist, I'll place it -1. I'm going to take out 1 inch just because really there's no reason. I could still leave it at 12.5, but I just want it to look smaller, even if it won't even be noticeable. So I'm just placing my hip measurement, and then I'll go in here by 1, as I already said. You can decide to do that or not, because I'm going to be sewing from that point, from the waist. I'm not going to go up maybe by 2 inches to the armhole. No, it has to be free. Then I'll go down to the hemline. I'll also measure 12.5 inches here, and it's a free dress, as I've been saying. So I'll go in, I'll come out of that point like about 1 inch. That's 13.5 inches for the hemline, and then I'll just connect it to my hip. Now this part doesn't have to be straight. If you want it to be curved, please be my guest, but I don't want mine to be curved, so I'll just go up by 2 inches from the hemline. That's where I'm going to stop sewing. So I'll be sewing from the bust line to this point where I came down by 2 inches. Yeah, So if you're watching this video and you've not subscribed to my channel yet, please do so and hit that bell to always get a notification whenever I post a video. Okay, so now these markings I put here, I'm going to be putting it on the other side of the dress because I'll be sewing on the both sides, like the left and right side, and then I'll be trimming off this so it's going to be equal. Now let's cut out our neckline. I'll be cutting out the back first. After this, I'll go ahead to cut out the shoulder slope. Remember I said you don't have to put a shoulder slope if you don't want to. I'll go ahead to cut this. I came down by 1 inch on the side. Then I'll cut out the front neckline. First I'll fold in the back neckline. That's the 2 middle pieces, the 2 center pieces. It's double. Remember I folded it into 4. So I'll be putting this inside. I'll fold it in, so when I'm cutting out the front it doesn't affect it. I'll go ahead to cut out the front neckline now. Like so. And I'll take out the back that I tucked in earlier. Yeah, so the dress is ready. Yes, it is this easy. It's simple. I'll place these markings on the other side of the fabric because for this project we'll be sewing the front, so these markings have to be in front, not at the back. So I'm just marking my bust line. I'll mark the waistline and I'll mark the hip line. Then I'll flip it over so I can connect the lines because I'm going to be sewing on the line. Remember I didn't put any allowance because I'm already using my hip measurements for the bust, the waist and the hip. I don't need to put any allowance because I'm going to be sewing on the line. Now measure 12.5 on the hemline plus 1 inch, just the way I did on the other side. That's 13.5. And as I said earlier, you can curve the edge if you want to, but for this I won't be doing that. I want it straight. Then I'll come up by 2 inches, just the way I did on the other side. That's where I'll stop sewing. So from the bust line to that point where I came up by 2 inches on the hemline. Now I'm going to be trimming off the excess on the side just so it's equal. Sorry you can't see that. I'm trimming off the side. Yeah, now you can see it. I'm trimming off the side because I realized that it's about ½ inch out, like excess, and I want it to be equal. Well, it has to be equal, so that's why I'm trimming it out. It's that easy. Yeah, now I'm done. I'm going to be sewing on the lines. Yeah, here I'm going to be sewing right here and I'll be stopping at that point. The same thing on this side. Then the piece that I cut out for my collar, it's on fold, remember, so I'm going to iron interfacing, and then I'll show us how to attach it to the neckline. Let me go ahead and sew this. Okay, so before sewing I've pinned it down, that way I can show you what it looks like. I've pinned it down here. I'll sew this part, I'll sew here, I'll stop at 2 inches above the hemline, then I'll fold the sides in just like this. I'll fold this side, and I'll fold on this side as well. I'll fold it in and here. Remember, we are sewing at the front, on the front of the dress. Then I would close the shoulder. So when I'm coming back, I'm going to show you the finished work on this, and then I'll show you what I'll be doing with the collar. All right. This is the collar. I've ironed the lightweight interfacing on both sides of the piece. I measured around the neckline and then I got 26. So each of this piece is 26 inches. So I've joined the lower part of this together. Yes, and I've notched it. So now I'll close it up and then sew the sides like so. I'll sew it. I put half an inch allowance, sewing allowance. So I'll sew that point and then close it up. So I'm done joining it on the side. This is what it looks like. Yeah, and I'm just turning it back to the right side. So I'll give this a good press and then attach this part to the dress. I'll attach it to the dress, to the neckline of the dress. I notch the center. That's it, and we're done. So now I'm done attaching it to the neckline of the dress, and the dress is ready. So I'll just go ahead and give it a good press and then put it on and slay away. Alright, thank you. Bye.